Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. Freedom Studios is an intercultural theatre company based in Bradford, West Yorkshire, which is about to open a new play by Tajinder Singh Hayer called North Country at the Wild Woods in Bradford. I spoke to Alex Chisolm, the play's director and recently appointed co-artistic director of Freedom Studios, and I asked her to tell us something about the play.
North Country is a new play by Tajinder Singh Hayer, who's a Bradford-born and bred writer. It's a post-apocalyptic play set in Bradford. It follows three young people, Nusrat, Harvinder and Jason Alain, who are three of the survivors of a worldwide plague that's wiped out 99% of the population. And the play follows them through the immediate aftermath of the apocalypse, 10 years later, when they've started to build up the communities, but everything looks like it might be on the verge of falling apart. And then 40 years later, and the play, in a way, is looking back over the story of this post-apocalyptic society and seeing how it survived and what survived.
So it's covering quite a long period of time. That sounds like quite a challenge for you and for the actors.
Well, it sort of looks at three particular periods of time. So it looks at that kind of first immediate period when you're right up against trying to find food, find shelter, find protection, because there's a lot of dangers in this new world. And then they overcome those kind of immediate dangers. And then the next layer of danger is, okay, we've survived and we've created these things and these communities and these identities that have helped us to survive. Now, how do we survive together? What are the things that made us strong in this period of intense stress and danger? And how are they now making us dangerous to each other? The play looks at what happens to individuals and communities when they feel under stress, when they feel in danger. And as I think we can see quite clearly, there are reactions in the way people behave in those circumstances, which are immediately positive for them, but can be quite dangerous and difficult when they come into contact with other people.
This post-apocalyptic dystopian fiction there seems to have been a bit of a resurgence recently, particularly in teenage novels. It seems to become very popular, but they're all about somebody or a group of people who are put under this kind of stress to see. I happen to be reading Day of the Triffids at the moment, which is the same sort of thing, and I watched the film The Road last night, which is a similar sort of idea. So what does this play bring that's new to the genre?
Well, one thing, it's happening in Bradford.
Yes.
And that was part of Taj's reason, is that he's very interested in genre and in sort of sci-fi future genres. But they always seem to be happening elsewhere, sort of in America or somewhere like London. And you go, well, actually, it's happening everywhere. So what's happening in Bradford? And I think that then says something about us and the communities we're living within now, to kind of explore what that future might be. So part of it is actually just about it happening in Bradford with the people who live in Bradford now. How would they survive?
Yeah, I like what he said about he's grown up in Bradford and it's a post-industrial place where you've got the skeletons of all the old industrial buildings there, which it gives you the right setting, really, visually, doesn't it?
It does. And where we're doing the play, which is the basement of an old Marks and Spencer building on Darley Street, it felt like a very appropriate setting for it when Westfield opened in Bradford, which brought a great deal of very good things to Bradford. But Darley Street, which had been the old shopping precinct, that just closed down and there's very little open on it. So that street feels like the world of the play, in that it was a place full of life and full of people and a centre of the community. Then that emptied, and now it's starting to come back to life again. So where we're performing the venue's been called the Wild Woods. It's been transformed into a sort of community art space. So the play feels like it is the community coming together to tell its own history, and doing it in that place feels like we're drawing on the actual community and the actual history of Bradford.
Yeah. These sorts of stories, though, they often use a lot of locations. You already said it's a long time period, and there's a lot of running away from threats and moving on from one place to the next. That's quite a challenge to stage, is it?
The way this play works, it uses a lot of storytelling, so a lot of direct address. As I said, it feels like the community has come together to sort of share these stories. The other thing is, with this production, we're leaving a lot to the audience's imagination. So a lot of it is going to be quite dark and quite spooky. And when you're downstairs in an abandoned shop, I think you can imagine a lot of what might be going on in the apocalypse.
Yes. The writer has said that he's been involved, Tajinder, he said he'd been involved with quite a lot of science fiction and fantasy and horror. These are genres that often use these fantasy or futuristic worlds or these dystopian worlds to comment on our own world. So is there some element of social or political comment in this play?
I think it is about exploring our own world through looking at a possible dystopian future. I think as we've been working on the play, and I've been working with Taj on it since beginning of 2015, and he's been working on it since 2012, it has felt actually more and more relevant, as it has felt like the communities and the society we're in feels more and more polarized and more pressured. And working on this play allows us to explore these things, explore what happens to people when they feel fearful, explore what happens when people feel like they have to kind of shore up a very strong sense of identity, what happens when people come up against difference and how they are creating a new country, what that means, without actually having to get into the nitty-gritty of particular issues now. So we don't have to talk about the rights and wrongs of Brexit, but we can still explore what happens when people feel frightened, or people feel like they're trying to create something new, or people have different opinions of what the new country should be, and what it means to make individual decisions within that. And therefore, I think it means that we can all come together to look at these things. Whereas if you're particularly talking about a particular current issue, it's very likely that some people will feel excluded from that if they feel that you don't share their particular opinion. Whereas this is imagining a different kind of world and a different kind of scenario allows us all to come together to look at it.
Do you think that idea is particularly relevant in Bradford? Because it's a very diverse culturally and racially community, isn't it, there?
It is. I think that is absolutely embedded into the play, because the three characters, if you like, represent three different communities or three different kinds of people you can find within Bradford. So one of them is white farmer's lad from rural Bradford. One is a young girl of British Pakistani origin from Manningham. One is a young British Indian Sikh boy whose parents are doctors. So the play, is looking very much at Bradford and Bradford communities and what would happen with this scenario happening in Bradford. So, yeah, I think it is particularly relevant, but then I don't think it's only relevant for Bradford. I think it's kind of relevant for us in sort of Britain more broadly. We are a very diverse, multicultural society. And so these are things that we collectively have to think of. I like to think of Bradford as something of a microcosm of modern Britain.
It's amazing how many people I've interviewed about various productions recently, particularly something that's got a social or political comment involved in this, and they've said it seems to be more relevant now than it's ever been, and that seems to be the case with this play, is it?
Yes, I think so. But we do seem to be living through particularly volatile times, and therefore, and particularly dramatic times. So if you're making drama, I can imagine that it is just increasingly feeling like real life. In fact, I think that's maybe why social realism is kind of losing out and fantasy and sci-fi is winning, because you actually, some of the stuff that's happening in real life, you couldn't make up. No. It just seems so fantastical. So I think we kind of almost have to go into a fantastical realm to even, explore what it means. So yeah, I can well imagine that pretty much all plays are feeling like they're more and more kind of like real life.
The venue that you mentioned before, it's the basement in a old Marks and Spencer's, but it's got an intriguing name, the Wild Woods of Bradford. It sounds quite interesting. What type of venue is it? How are you using the specs?
Well, it's the whole venue. It's a big building, kind of a big, quite 1960s style, and the ground floor has been completely transformed into the Wild Woods by a company called Brickbox. And they're having all kinds of music and events and meetings and talks in there. We're actually downstairs in the basement, which used to be the food hall. And we're transforming that into a kind of post-apocalyptic community gathering. A lot of things that's inspired our designer, Uzma Ghazi, is actually looking at some of the pictures of makeshift refugee camps, because the story is pretty much, it is a refugee story. It's a story of what you have if everything is destroyed and what you make out of that, and what would human ingenuity create. So yes, we are creating our own kind of new world within the basement.
So is this a more immersive performance, or is it more conventional with people sat down watching a play?
People are sat down watching. What we're trying to do, though, is take everyone into the world of the play. So rather than a sense of it there being a division between audience and play world, as you might have in a theatre, people are sat round in a circle and the play happens in and around you. So you become part of the world of the play, and I think people will get a very strong sense of that they're entering into a new world.
So it's somewhere between immersive and a sit-down play. You still get the experience.
Yeah, you still do. I mean, but you get to sit down.
Yes,
probably better. So yes, but you are completely within the world we're creating.
It's a fairly short run of performances that you've got at the Wild Woods place, but are there any plans to take this further or to support the writer to develop it any further?
Yes, we're looking at potentially touring it next year. And the beautiful thing about the play is that it's very, very flexible, so it can perform both in theatre spaces but non-theatre spaces as well. So we would like to take it out to non-theatre spaces, community centres, schools, and a wider audience.
How far is your reach as a company? Do you travel outside the area?
We have. So we recently toured a production called Chip Shop the Musical, and that started in Bolton, and then it did a tour in Yorkshire as part of the Yorkshire Festival, so it went as far as Thirsk. Did performances in Barnsley, Doncaster. So yes, we do get around.
Well, as you've just joined Freedom Studios as the co-artistic director, what is Freedom Studios? What's the philosophy behind the company?
Freedom Studios we believe we're here to offer opportunities and development to everyone through theatre. Both Aisha Khan, who's my fellow co-artistic director, and I really believe in the transformative power of theatre, both on individual level to realise the potential within yourself and also within communities. We believe in bringing people together through theatre. So that goes across all the things we do. So yes, we make productions, we develop artists, writers, directors, actors, particularly from Bradford. We work with young people because we believe in order to give opportunities for people through theatre, you need to be starting with young people to show them that this is something for them as well. And we're always looking for other opportunities to get people involved, to get into conversation with all our audiences and our communities about what kind of theatre they want to see and what kind of communities they want to be living within.
Do you find there are challenges in getting certain people involved because of their background or because of their gender or their age or class? Do you feel that some people are more reluctant?
I'm not sure. I genuinely think that people will come to see something if they feel it is relevant to them, if they get the information in a form and a format that is accessible to them, and that it is made, that they are clear about where they're coming and how they do it, and that they're made to feel welcome through the whole process. And so I think we've got to consistently challenge ourselves to make sure that all those things are in place. Is what we're doing relevant to the people that we're trying to engage with? Are we getting information out to people in a form and a format that they find easy to access? And are we being welcoming and easy to access? And that's sometimes thinking around all the things you've got to think about when people come to us is how are they going to get there? Where do they buy the tickets from? Are the tickets at a price that seems reasonable to people? Is the venue, does that feel interesting and welcoming for them to come into? Do they feel at home when they get there? So yeah, it is a challenge, but I think that people will always come to things where they feel welcome and that feels important to them. So it's about us making sure that people feel welcome and that we make work and opportunities that are relevant.
And I suppose if you can say we're in Marks and Spencer's food hall, then most people will know where that is, don't they?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we wanted to be there, is that people have a familiarity with that space and they might actually go, oh, well, yeah, that'll be interesting. I've not been there for a while.
Yes.
I'll go there.
So as a newcomer to the company, what are you bringing to the company that perhaps it didn't have before? What was your selling point at the interview?
So Aisha and I applied together. The company was started as Freedom Studios under Madden Eunice out of Asian Theatre School. And then when he left to run the bush, Deborah Dickinson stayed on as creative producer. We applied as co-artistic directors. So I think that was one of the things that we felt. We both direct, we're both dramaturgs, so we both work with writers and directors to develop work, and Aisha's also a playwright, so we bring those consciousnesses. And also we have both worked for years in both kind of education and artist development, and we really wanted to make those things key and all the work of the company to be holistic. So we're looking across all the things we do: production, education, participation, artist development, see how can we make those things join up, and how can we join up with the rest of the sector, the industry, so that we are really able to promote new artists and also provide something that's really important and valuable to all our audiences.
Where do you start with a project like this when you're developing it? Where does the collaboration start?
Well, this one in particular, Taj brought me the script because I'd worked with him before. So when I worked for West Yorkshire Playhouse as their literary person for a long time. So, in fact, I put him on a new writing course a long time ago, and then had him as a young writer on Attachment, which is where he wrote his first full-length play. So there's already an existing relationship there. So he originally brought me the script and asked me whether I wanted to do an initial reading of it. And because we have a working relationship, that work on the script has sort of been ongoing. And then I brought it to the company when Aisha and I started. And so it's been a case of them thinking about, so if we're going to do this, how do we do this? Where's the best place? What's the best team to put together? And I'm very lucky to have a very, very Bradford team. So all 3 actors are from Bradford, Bradford designer, Bradford stage manager. And so that's what I mean about it being holistic. It is the play talking about a really relevant topic for the city with a team from here that is also about their development and their promotion.
So I assume that you've got lots of different projects, lots of different balls in the air at any one time. So what else have you got coming up?
Well, there's some things that were sort of there as part of the company's work when we arrived that we're still working on. One of those things is Ice Cream Opera, which is a lovely chamber opera piece by Ian Macmillan and composer Russell Sarr. So we've got that, which we're hoping to do. We've, as I said, hoping to take North Country on. We've been working with Tim Wheeler, who's Bradford director, to restage the Russian Revolution in Bradford in 2017, which should be exciting.
Of course, they'll be anniversary, won't they?
Yeah. And then we have 3 associate artists at the moment. Natalie Davis, who's in North Country, Kamal Khan, who's also in North Country, and Imran Ali, he's a technologist. He's a digital expert, so he'll be working with us on how that integrates with our work. And so we're hoping that Kamal, who's a writer, and Natalie will also kind of be developing projects with us while they're here.
I was interested in this role of a technologist, because you expect a technologist in a theatre company to be the person who operates the lighting and sound, but I take it there's a bit more to it than that. Yeah,
he's not that kind of technologist. So yes, I met Kamal through a series of meetings that the council were running when we were developing a bid for Bradford to host the Great Exhibition of the North. And his work has combined digital development, so things like software, virtual reality, augmented reality, to see how those things can enable storytelling and enable communities and enable almost like constructing future worlds, and how do people interact with those. So it's quite a new territory, but a really exciting one. So he kind of is coming in to hang out with us for over the next few months and see how the world of digital technology and the world of theatre can collide.
Well, there have been some experiments with those sorts of combinations, some more successful than others. Can you see it going anywhere at the moment, or is it too early to say?
I think it's a bit early to say. What I'd say is it's less about either putting digital into shows per se, and not about, and the other way that digital gets talked about in theatre is often about marketing, and it's not about marketing either. It's almost starting from people. And so what stories do people want to tell? What stories do we want to tell about our communities? How do we want to use telling existing stories and imagining future stories to work in terms of developing who people are and how they interrelate with each other and how we bring communities together? And therefore, how can digital means help that? So it might be about finding more platforms for the kind of work that writers and actors and directors make. How does that work reach people, particularly given that pretty much everyone has a smartphone now? looking at the Revolution project in particular, are there ways in which that becomes a completely immersive citywide experience that you can interrelate with live and on your mobile device? So yeah, it's looking at what's our core. Well, what's our core is to make people's lives better, really. How can you develop yourself, what's in you and the life in your community? How can we do that through the broadest sense of what theatre is? How can all these wonderful new technologies come in to support that effort?
That was director Alex Chisolm talking about North Country by Tajinder Singh Hayer, which will be produced by Freedom Studios at the Wildwoods in Bradford from the 26th of October to the 5th of November 2016. For more information, see www.freedomstudios.co.uk. You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.